Karen screams at weather presenter on TV store demo. The rain came down in gentle, consistent sheets, washing the streets outside in a glossy shimmer of gray. The parking lot of Modern Tech Electronics was sparsely filled, the usual weekday bustle dimmed by the dreary weather. Inside the showroom, the hum of fluorescent lights bounced off rows of polished TV screens, each one broadcasting a different channel to showcase color depth, resolution, and audio fidelity. Jard, the store manager, was halfway through repositioning a stack of promotional tablets near the checkout counter, while his junior associate, Rena, was carefully wiping fingerprints off a display of 75-inch Ultra HD OLED televisions. The sound of weather alerts played softly from one of the larger screens. A male weather presenter in a crisp blue suit was gesturing at a swirling storm pattern approaching the city on the digital map behind him, warning of potential thunder, wind, and localized flooding. It was background noise, just part of the ambience, until the store's glass door swung open with a gust of cold, wet air, and in marched a woman clutching a leopard print handbag, dripping umbrella, and a face contorted with irritation. Karen's arrival, as always, was heralded by the clack of her heels and a theatrical sigh of frustration. She paused just inside the doorway, surveying the showroom with a sour expression as if expecting someone to greet her with a red carpet and a latte. When no such welcome appeared, she stomped forward, loudly declaring, "Well, I guess customer service isn't a priority today." Jard, already bracing himself, straightened up and forced a neutral smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can we help you find something?" Karen gave him a look like he'd just asked her to hold his chewing gum. "I'm looking for a new television, obviously. Something family safe, not those monstrosities that scream at you from across the room. I swear the TVs in here are louder than a nightclub." Rena quietly turned down the volume on a nearby set. Jard motioned toward a quieter aisle and gestured for Karen to follow. "Right this way. We've got a range of models with customizable audio profiles and family viewing modes. Any particular size in mind?" Karen was already marching ahead, muttering, "Nothing obscene. These manufacturers are obsessed with size. It's vulgar. I just want something classy that doesn't try to assault my senses." As they passed by the featured display wall, 8 massive televisions aligned in a cinematic arc, Karen froze mid-step. Her head slowly turned toward the screen where the weather presenter was now detailing the probability of hail in several outlying neighborhoods, including one she was particularly familiar with. The forecast graphic flared in bright red, as the presenter gravely cautioned viewers to remain indoors if possible during the peak hours of the storm. And Karen's eyes widened. She took one sharp step back, then wheeled around with the force of someone who'd been personally insulted. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at the TV. "Why are you broadcasting this? Is this a threat?" Rena blinked, confused. "It's the Weather Channel, ma'am. It's just part of the demo." Karen turned to her, mouth agape. "Fear-mongering, plain and simple. Who gave you the right to shove catastrophic news in my face without my permission?" Jard stepped in quickly, his tone calm but firm. "It's just a live feed to showcase the clarity and color fidelity. It's not meant to upset anyone. We can change the channel if you'd like." But Karen was already ramping up, her voice rising an octave with each word. "Oh, now you want to change it? After you've already traumatized me. I didn't come here to be mentally assaulted by talk of storms and flooding. This is psychological warfare disguised as electronics." Other shoppers began to glance over, some pausing to watch the unfolding scene. One young man near the headphone section casually raised his phone and began recording, half hidden behind a speaker tower. Jard subtly noticed but chose not to react. Rena tried again, soft-spoken and soothing. "We can put on a different channel, maybe a cooking show or something light-hearted. No problem." But Karen wouldn't be mollified. She stomped her foot hard enough to make her umbrella bounce against her leg and declared, "You people are sick. Broadcasting doom and gloom without a single warning label. What about people with anxiety? What about children? What if someone saw that and had a panic attack?" Jard, struggling to keep his professional smile intact, slowly walked over to the wall remote and switched the screen to a home renovation program. On cue, chipper music filled the space as cheerful hosts discussed kitchen tiles. Karen scoffed. "Now you're gaslighting me, trying to pretend it never happened. I saw that forecast and I demand compensation." Jard turned, puzzled. "Compensation?" Karen crossed her arms. "Yes, I am emotionally distressed. I was looking forward to a relaxing shopping experience, and instead I was subjected to terrorism by satellite radar. I want something for the trauma you've caused." Jard glanced at Rena, who looked like she was internally screaming. "I'm not sure we're authorized to provide emotional compensation for weather coverage." Karen leaned forward. "Then give me a discount or a gift card, or call whoever runs this store and tell them I want hazard pay for walking into this psychological landmine." Jard took a slow breath. "Ma'am, again, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Would you like to speak to customer service?" Karen snapped her fingers. "That's what I just said. Take me to your service desk immediately." As Rena walked her toward the counter, Karen passed the weather display again, now frozen in an advertisement loop. She narrowed her eyes at the paused image of the weather presenter. "And him. I want him fired. That smug little weatherman, talking about storms like he's announcing a parade. People like that are the reason society is falling apart. Always making everything worse, never offering solutions. He should be ashamed." Jard and Rena exchanged glances again, half amusement, half exhaustion. Karen, meanwhile, stood at the counter as if preparing to argue in front of a jury. She pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbed her dry eyes for effect, and declared, "I am lodging a formal complaint. This establishment has caused me irreversible emotional damage. I'll be writing a very detailed post about this. I have a lot of followers." Rain continued to patter softly against the showroom windows as Jard opened the incident report log, knowing this shift was far from over. Karen's voice echoed through the electronics store like a siren made of indignation and misplaced righteousness. She stood at the customer service counter like a self-appointed prosecutor, her umbrella propped dramatically beside her, its dripping canopy forming a small puddle at her feet that no one dared mop up yet. Rena sat behind the counter with her fingers hovering over the keyboard of the intake computer, doing her best to maintain the expression of someone who was present only in body, her soul having exited the moment Karen began her tirade. Jard had taken a position just a few feet away, arms crossed, the customer complaint log open in his hands, as he prepared to transcribe whatever impossible grievances Karen would now try to enshrine in corporate history. Karen cleared her throat with theatrical flair before speaking, as though preparing to deliver a victim impact statement. "I would like this entered officially into the record," she began, her voice steady and filled with the unshakable confidence of someone who believed herself not only correct but also morally superior. "Today, while shopping for a peaceful television to enhance my family's emotional well-being, I was assaulted, yes, assaulted, by a visual and auditory barrage of terroristic weather propaganda. Without warning, I was subjected to images of storm clouds, lightning symbols, and bold red text proclaiming doom and destruction. This was not consented to. I did not agree to be mentally manipulated or have my stress levels elevated in such a public and violent fashion." Jard tried not to sigh audibly and simply nodded, pen poised over the page, pretending to take the statement seriously as Karen continued without pause. "Furthermore, when I voiced my concerns in a calm and respectful manner, which, by the way, you can verify from the store's own security footage, I was met not with empathy but with hostility and deflection. Your employee," she gestured toward Rena without looking at her, "tried to trivialize my reaction, offering to change the channel like that would magically erase the trauma I had just endured. Let me be clear. I'm not some fragile flower, but I am a mother, a taxpayer, and a proud citizen who believes that corporations should be held accountable when they weaponize public information." A teenage boy near the phone accessories section chuckled under his breath, earning a sharp glare from Karen, who added to her report with emphasis, "And now I am being mocked by other patrons while trying to protect my mental safety. This is a hostile shopping environment. I expect this store to issue a full apology, provide compensation for my emotional distress, and most importantly, I demand that the offending content be removed permanently from all future demonstrations. No more weather terror. No more disaster obsession. Just family-friendly, uplifting content. We are in a society after all. Jard scribbled something illegible on the logbook and looked up with a forced smile. Thank you for that detailed account, ma'am. I've noted everything and will forward it to our corporate liaison. Unfortunately, I don't have the authority to provide any monetary compensation on the spot, but I can assure you your concerns will be reviewed. Karen's eyes narrowed like a hawk who just spotted a mouse trying to escape through the grass. That's not good enough. I came here for resolution, not bureaucracy. If I walk out of this store without a gesture of goodwill, I will assume this company endorses psychological harm as a business model. Before Jard could formulate a response that wouldn't fan the flames further, Karen's head whipped around toward the televisions again. The Weather Channel had returned on one of the demo screens, an automatic reset built into the store's broadcast loop. The same cheerful weatherman was now discussing flash flood precautions, pointing out a neighborhood not far from the store itself. Karen gasped as if she'd just been physically struck and stormed across the showroom, shouting, "Again? Are you kidding me? You're doubling down on this meteorological madness. I told you this was damaging." She reached for the remote hanging on a nearby kiosk and began mashing buttons in a chaotic flurry, changing the input on several displays to blank HDMI screens before accidentally flipping one to a horror movie trailer where a shrieking woman ran through a dark forest. A group of customers burst out laughing at the irony. Karen turned to them, livid. "This isn't funny. You are all complicit. This is how society falls apart, when we normalize fear." She raised her voice higher, now projecting for the entire store to hear. "You think it's harmless until people start panicking, until someone has a heart attack from stress, and then it's all lawsuits and funerals. But by then it's too late." Rena stood up from behind the customer service counter and approached cautiously, like someone trying to soothe a rabid raccoon. "Ma'am, please, let me reset the TVs. We have a demo loop we can put on that shows beaches and waterfalls. It's very relaxing. No weather, no news, just nice visuals." But Karen shoved the remote toward her, still ranting. "It's not just about me. What about children? What about elderly people who come in and see that broadcast? You're creating a culture of fear and panic. If I wanted to be frightened, I'd watch the news at home. I come here for entertainment, for peace, not end-of-the-world hysteria." Jard, now aware that multiple customers were filming on their phones, including someone who whispered, "This is going straight on TikTok," realized there was no way to contain the situation anymore. He whispered something into his walkie-talkie, and moments later, a pair of mall security guards entered the store. Noticing them approach, Karen turned on her heel and said loudly, "Finally, officers of justice. I need you to write up this establishment for psychological harassment and community endangerment." One of the guards, a lanky man with a name tag that read Paul, raised an eyebrow and replied with a calm, measured tone, "Ma'am, we're here to make sure everyone's safe and the store can operate without disruption. Are you asking us to file a report, or are you requesting assistance with a purchase?" Karen stared at him like he'd spoken in Martian. "Are you even listening to me? They are showing panic-inducing visuals on public screens without consent. That's a form of abuse." Paul remained diplomatic but firm. "We're happy to help you resolve the issue or assist you in leaving the store if you're feeling unsafe. Otherwise, we're going to have to ask that you allow the store to continue operating for other customers." Karen opened her mouth to protest again, but a new sound cut through the air, the chirp of an incoming message from Jard's work phone. He glanced at the screen, and his eyes widened slightly. The video of Karen's initial meltdown had gone viral, already over 50,000 views and counting. He looked up, barely hiding a smirk. "Ma'am, it appears you're becoming somewhat of a local celebrity." Karen, utterly unaware, beamed proudly. "Good. Maybe now people will start taking this issue seriously." Rena muttered under her breath, "Oh, they're taking it seriously, all right. Just not the way you think." The rain continued to patter on the windows, and the weatherman, still smiling behind the glass, warned of more thunder approaching as the scene inside the store somehow grew even more absurd. The sound of the store's glass doors opening again barely registered amid the chaos, but to Jared's mounting disbelief, the very subject of Karen's outrage was now striding into the showroom in the flesh. Dressed not in a suit but in a light blue windbreaker and jeans, Miles Greer, the weatherman whose face had sparked a public relations war between rationality and absurdity, walked in with an amused smile and a calm, almost regal air. He held a coffee in one hand and a reusable grocery tote in the other, as if he'd simply stopped by after errands. Jared blinked, momentarily unsure if he was hallucinating from the stress of the last hour. But it was real. One of the floor staff had tweeted at the local news station as a joke earlier, tagging Miles in the viral video and saying, "Hey, at Miles Greer TV, you might want to respond to this weather war happening in aisle 3. Apparently, the man had decided to do exactly that. His arrival was met with a few gasps from the younger customers who recognized him instantly, while others quickly turned their phone cameras on him, shifting from Karen's rant to what promised to be an even more bizarre spectacle. Karen, still standing at the customer service counter and preparing to write down a list of local agencies she planned to contact, looked up at the murmurs of recognition, then narrowed her eyes. At first, she didn't seem to recognize him out of context, but as Miles approached and gave a slight wave, saying, "Afternoon, everyone, looks like we've got a bit of a media storm brewing in here," something clicked. Her mouth dropped open, not in awe but in unmistakable horror, as she realized the very man she demanded be fired had now appeared in person. She stiffened like a cornered cat and clutched her handbag with both hands as though it were a holy relic. Miles stopped a respectful distance from her and offered a disarming grin. "Hi there, I'm Miles. I saw your video. Thought I'd stop by and apologize in person if I may. I didn't mean to frighten anyone with my forecast." Karen blinked rapidly, clearly thrown off balance by his calm demeanor and unexpected presence. You came here, to me?" she stammered, as if trying to decide whether she was flattered, threatened, or preparing to denounce him on the spot. Miles gave a polite nod, holding up his coffee like a peace offering. "Well, after reading your very passionate perspective, I figured I owed you a conversation. Maybe even a little clarity on how this whole weather thing works." Karen recovered quickly, squaring her shoulders. "Don't patronize me. You may fool others with that smug smile and well-groomed hair, but I know what you're doing. Weaponizing information, emotional terrorism through barometric pressure." The room went silent for a moment before someone near the smart fridges snorted audibly. Miles's eyes twinkled with amusement, but he kept his tone respectful. "You know, I'm really just a guy who points at clouds on a screen. I don't actually control the weather. I read data from satellites and tell people what to expect. Whether they bring an umbrella or cancel a picnic, that's up to them." Karen shook her head, refusing to let the absurdity of her own claims sink in. "That's exactly the problem. You make everything sound like the end of the world. Severe thunderstorm watch, take shelter. Do you know how that language affects people's hearts, their minds?" Miles raised a brow. "I do. That's why we use specific terms to keep people informed. Imagine if I said it might rain a little and someone's roof blew off because I didn't warn them. Wouldn't that be worse?" She waved him off. "You could use gentler words, comforting ones. Call it a gentle weather massage instead of a storm front. People don't need to hear about hail and chaos at 10 in the morning when they're trying to sip tea." Jared, who'd been silently watching the exchange while pretending to straighten a shelf of overpriced HDMI cables, felt like he was witnessing an improv comedy skit gone gloriously off-script. Rena was behind the counter, biting the inside of her cheek so hard she might draw blood if she dared to laugh. One of the customers whispered, "This needs to be a series," as they continued filming. Miles, however, wasn't mocking. He simply nodded thoughtfully, clearly trying to be diplomatic. "I appreciate your perspective. Really, I do. But my job isn't to coddle people. It's to give them accurate, actionable information. I don't control what people do with it, but I have to make sure they have it. The world can be dangerous. A little warning can save lives." Karen scoffed. What about emotional safety? You act like only physical storms matter. What about the storms in people's souls? Miles chuckled softly, more at the poetry of her phrasing than at the meaning behind it. Ma'am, if I had the power to predict those, I'd be a billionaire. A small laugh rippled through the store, but Karen remained stoic, unimpressed. I'm not here to be laughed at. I'm here to start a movement, a campaign for calming content and emotionally mindful forecasts. No more fear, no more drama, just serenity in the skis. Miles glanced at Jard, then back at Karen. Well, I'm open to ideas. If you ever want to come by the studio and see how it all works, you're welcome to. Might clear up some misconceptions. Karen looked suspicious. Is that an ambush, a trap? He raised his hands. Scout's honor, no trickery, just facts, green screens, and maybe a donut or two if you're lucky. There was a beat of silence as Karen weighed the offer. To everyone's shock, she gave a terse nod. Fine, I'll consider it, but don't think this means you're forgiven. You still traumatized me, and I'm still posting my blog. The world needs to know the truth. Miles bowed slightly. All I ask is that you spell my name right. With that, he turned to Jard and gave him a friendly slap on the shoulder. You run a fine establishment. Sorry for the disruption. Guess the winds of drama are blowing harder than usual today. Jard let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. No apology needed. Honestly, I think we'll be trending for a week because of this. Karen, still puffed up with self-righteousness, turned on her heel and marched back toward the exit. But before leaving, she paused at the door, looking back at the televisions now playing a peaceful loop of ocean waves. Much better, she muttered. Keep it that way. The doors slid open, letting in a gust of wind and rain as she disappeared into the drizzle. Outside, the sky rumbled gently. Inside, laughter finally broke free as the store returned to its strange new normal. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle outside, painting streaks on the storefront windows that shimmered under the artificial glow of the electronics store's overhead lights. Inside, the mood had shifted from stunned disbelief to cautious amusement. The absurdity of the afternoon was still sinking in as the employees tried to return to their routines, albeit with the sense that normalcy was now a fragile illusion. Jard stood behind the counter, phone in hand, scrolling through the explosion of online engagement the incident had generated. The video of Karen berating the TV weather broadcast had gone viral not just locally, but nationally, picked up by meme accounts and reaction channels alike. Headlines read like surrealist satire. Karen declares war on clouds. Weather presenter accused of atmospheric fearmongering. And the now ubiquitous #WeatherKaren was trending at number 4. Rena leaned over his shoulder, one hand covering her mouth as she stifled a giggle. This one has 30,000 likes already, she whispered, pointing at a clip of Karen shrieking about emotional terrorism, while a filter superimposed a thundercloud above her head and lightning bolts shooting from her umbrella. Jard shook his head, both bemused and resigned. We're going to be part of a BuzzFeed listicle by tomorrow. 10 times customer service turned into a soap opera or something. Their brief laughter was interrupted by a sharp noise, someone slapping the automatic door sensor. The glass doors whooshed open, and to everyone's dismay, Karen marched back in like a general returning to a battlefield she wasn't quite done conquering. She wore the same outfit as before, but now with the addition of a laminated badge clipped to her sweater that read Weather Accountability Advocate Founding Member. In her hands was a stack of professionally printed flyers and a rigidly upright posture that broadcast she had come not as a customer, but as a crusader. Attention, she barked before anyone could greet or stop her. Due to the continued refusal of this establishment to issue a public apology for their earlier psychological violations, I am officially commencing a demonstration of conscience. This will be a peaceful protest against climate-based emotional manipulation and television-induced distress. Jard groaned softly, already feeling a tension headache creeping up from the base of his neck. Ma'am, we already changed the displays. It's just landscapes now, ocean waves, clouds, koi ponds. There's nothing upsetting being shown. Karen shook her head, waving a flyer in the air as she walked deeper into the store. That's not enough. You're treating the symptoms, not the disease. We need policy, guidelines, enforceable boundaries about what kind of content can be shown in shared commercial spaces. No more surprise disasters. No more sneaky forecasts. We need consent-based broadcasting. She slapped one of the flyers onto a counter and continued marching, tapping them to display stands, speaker racks, and even the touchscreen panel of a smart fridge that blinked in confusion at the sudden intrusion. Rena took a flyer and scanned it, reading aloud. Demand safety in screens. Join the weather-free retail movement. Emotional forecasts should require customer approval. Support a softer future. She blinked. She even made a QR code. Jard rubbed his face. She's turning this into a real campaign. She's gonna get picketers in here. Customers began filing in again, some out of genuine interest, others purely to see if the spectacle was ongoing. A few asked, "Is this the store from the Weather Lady video?" And one man brought his teenage son in specifically to take selfies in front of the demo TVs. Karen, oblivious to the amusement swirling around her, planted herself near the central TV wall and pulled a folding sign from her tote. She popped it open with practiced force, revealing bold letters that screamed, "Sunshine only zone, storm porn not welcome." A young woman near the headphone section coughed to cover her laughter, whispering to her friend, "Did she really just say storm porn?" Jard approached Karen cautiously, holding up his hands in a gesture of negotiation. "Look, Karen, can I call you Karen?" Her eyebrow twitched, but she nodded stiffly. "Ms. Karen is fine." He tried again, choosing his words carefully. "Ms. Karen, I understand that you're passionate about this, and we respect your right to express yourself. But this is a private retail space. We can't allow unauthorized demonstrations inside the store. You're welcome to share your concerns outside on public property, but we really need to maintain an environment where customers can actually shop." Karen folded her arms. "So censorship then, silencing dissent. Is that how you treat community feedback, with exclusion?" Jard resisted the urge to groan. "No, we're asking you to respect the rules. You've made your point, quite loudly and to millions of people, but we can't operate if you turn the store into a political arena." Karen pointed to a passing customer. Were you emotionally harmed by the weather display earlier today?" The woman blinked, startled, then slowly shook her head. No, I was just here for a Bluetooth speaker." Karen huffed, turning back to Jard. "That's because it's been sanitized now. If I hadn't spoken up, who knows what trauma she could have walked into. You're welcome." Jard opened his mouth to respond, then paused as he spotted two more familiar figures entering the store, reporters from a local news affiliate, cameras already rolling. One of them nodded toward Jard and whispered to his cameraman, "That's the manager, and that's her, the Weather Lady." Karen's eyes lit up with triumph. "Ah, the media. Good. Let's get the truth out there." Within minutes, a makeshift press conference was underway between the smart vacuums and the surround sound display. Karen stood in front of the cameras and delivered a rambling manifesto about media ethics, emotional hygiene, and the looming tyranny of atmospheric dread. She quoted wellness blogs and a misattributed Einstein quote. She held up one of her flyers like a revolutionary pamphlet. "Today, it's hail and anxiety. Tomorrow, it's hurricane hysteria. We must reclaim our screens from the storm barons." One of the reporters, struggling not to smile, asked, "So just to clarify, you believe the weather forecast should be banned from public display because it's emotionally distressing?" Karen nodded solemnly. "Yes, until we have proper emotional guidelines. No one should be blindsided by calamity during a casual shopping trip." Outside, the clouds broke for a brief moment, sunlight spilling onto the wet pavement like a divine spotlight. Inside, Karen took it as a sign. "Look, the skis agree with me." Rena murmured, "Yeah, or it's just a normal weather pattern." But Jard was already thinking ahead. "We're going to need a PR strategy or a whole new demo loop. Maybe cats. Cats don't scare anyone." Karen raised her arms dramatically, basking in the brief sunlight streaming through the front window, declaring, "This is only the beginning." And as the news cameras zoomed in, Jard muttered under his breath, "Unfortunately, I believe you." By the end of the week, Modern tech electronics had become something it had never aspired to be, a battleground for philosophical debate over weather, media, and the fragile emotional landscape of the modern consumer. What had once been a quiet retail store known mostly for solid warranty plans and predictable weekend sales was now a trending location tag on multiple social platforms. Bloggers, vloggers, conspiracy theorists, wellness influencers, and the chronically curious had all descended upon the store at different times during the past 48 hours. Some to document, some to interview Jard and Rena, and others to simply take a selfie beside the infamous sunshine-only zone, protest sign still propped awkwardly near the flat-screen wall, like a monument to delusion and misplaced righteousness. Karen had returned multiple times, each time with new materials, laminated placards, QR code bumper stickers, and even a small table near the entrance displaying printed booklets titled Forecast Fatigue: How Atmospheric Negativity Impacts the Subconscious. Rena joked that she half expected her to start selling branded rain ponchos that Red Eye didn't consent to this storm. Jard was exhausted, his patience worn down to a smooth, cynical nub. What had begun as a routine workday had spiraled into an ongoing spectacle, requiring him to issue public statements, field press inquiries, and hold meetings with the regional manager, who wasn't angry exactly, but certainly not thrilled that his store had become the face of a bizarre cultural flashpoint. Every time he thought things might settle, another video clip surfaced or another blogger tagged the store in a dramatic re-edit of Karen's now infamous tirade. At one point, someone added a techno beat to her shouting, turning it into a club track that hit 500,000 views overnight. Still, as absurd as it all was, sales had inexplicably gone up. People were walking in to see the chaos and walking out with headphones, speakers, and high-end TV sets. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Karen's outrage had become their most successful marketing campaign in years. But on the following Saturday afternoon, something shifted. The rain returned, heavier this time, thudding against the roof of the mall with a kind of ominous rhythm. Jard stood near the checkout, watching as a few early shoppers trickled in, their umbrellas dripping, their coats soaked at the hems. He half expected Karen to burst through the doors again, armed with new laminated threats and another slogan crafted in the dead of night. But she didn't. Instead, she came in quietly, without fanfare or declaration, dressed not in her usual dramatic attire but in a subdued beige raincoat, her hair tied back, face oddly unreadable. She didn't look around for an audience, didn't carry her flyers or signs. She simply walked over to the demo wall where the televisions now played a silent loop of idyllic landscapes, sunsets, beaches, and slow-motion clips of dogs playing in meadows, and stared at them for a long time. Rena noticed her first and nudged Jard. "She's back," she whispered, but her voice wasn't tense or annoyed. It was curious, maybe even a little cautious. Jard looked up from his inventory tablet, took one look at Karen standing motionless in front of the koi pond video and sighed. "Let's see what this is about." He walked over slowly, hands in his pockets, no longer anxious but guarded. "Afternoon, Miss Karen," he said gently. "Enjoying the peace and quiet today?" She didn't turn to him right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower than usual, stripped of its usual theatricality. "I saw the storm report this morning. Real storm, flash flood warning. They showed it on every station. I didn't have to be in a store to see it, couldn't even avoid it online. I realized something." She turned then, looking at him fully. "The weather's going to happen whether I like it or not." Jard blinked, unsure if this was a setup for another monologue or if something deeper had finally cracked through. "Yeah," he replied softly, "that's usually how it works." Karen gave a faint smile, just a twitch of her lips, like someone trying to process a joke they didn't quite understand. "You know, I used to feel better when things were predictable, when I could wake up, sip my coffee, and not be surprised by anything. Then everything started feeling shaky. Like even the sky wasn't safe anymore. The news, the updates, all of it. I think I tried to control the one thing I couldn't." Jard nodded slowly. "It's been a weird few years for everyone. I think we all started reaching for something to make the world feel smaller, simpler." Karen exhaled, her breath fogging slightly against the cool air of the showroom. "I still think there's something wrong with the way news is pushed in people's faces. But maybe screaming at a television in a retail store wasn't the best form of activism." For a long moment there was silence between them, broken only by the faint audio of a babbling brook on one of the demo videos. Jard gestured toward the seating area near the smart home section. "You want a coffee? We've got a Keurig in the break room. It's not artisanal, but it's hot." Karen hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Yeah, I think I'd like that." As they walked together, side by side instead of adversarially, Rena watched from a distance, her expression puzzled. "Are they bonding?" she muttered to herself. In the break room, they sat across from one another, Karen nursing a paper cup and Jard leaning against the counter. They didn't talk politics or policy, didn't dissect the philosophical underpinnings of her campaign. They talked about the rain, about how her roof leaked near the kitchen window, and about the time a squirrel chewed through the cabling of Jard's satellite dish. It was mundane. It was human. When Karen finally left an hour later, she didn't take any flyers with her. She didn't mention the campaign, didn't ask about media coverage, and didn't demand an apology. She simply said, "Thanks," and walked out into the drizzle, the glass doors sliding shut behind her with a quiet sigh. Jard watched her go, unsure if that chapter had truly ended, but knowing at least the storm inside the store had passed. Outside, the clouds hung low, but the rain had gentled, and for the first time in days, the atmosphere inside Modern Tech felt still, peaceful, predictable.